What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of our NFL season preview. If you've seen the episodes before, you know what we're getting into. We're going to run through last season's highlights, the lowlights. We're going to look at this season. That's the main focus of this video. We're going to look at the additions, the subtractions, the coaching changes, what we can expect through the schedule of each team. But today we're going to work on the New England Patriots. We're halfway through the league at this point. You can check out the other videos of all the breakdowns of all your other teams if you'd like. It's on the playlist for this channel under NFL season preview. If you like what we're doing here, please hit that like, comment, and please hit that subscribe button. We're working our way all the way through every team before the season gets started in September. So we'll get right into it with the New England Patriots today. I'll highlight as I go so you know where I'm at throughout the video. So let's talk about last season. So last season, the Patriots were 10-7. They overachieved based on what everyone expected them to do. You know, we expected them to be a little worse, especially having Mac Jones at the helm. He came out, looked great. They did start 2-4, but they did then win 7 straight and then finish the season 1-3. So a bunch of up and downs if you were a Patriots fan last year. But they did make the playoffs. Ended up getting blown out in the first round, but they did make the playoffs, which was better than what a lot of people expected them to do. Looking at their additions last year, we'll go with first off, let's get into the coaching before we start additions. Main problem with the coaching is I hadn't seen this on anyone else's depth chart, but it still says vacant because they hadn't named an offensive coordinator, and we'll get into that in detail in this video about the lack of clarity or transparency that's going on with this Patriots coaching staff. Still got Bill Belichick. Got Steve in there as well. Dry Mayo's also stepped in as the D coordinator, or helping out, I should say. But we'll discuss that more as we go through the video. But let's talk about the draft first. First round pick was a surprise to a lot of people. They took Cole Strange, the guard out of Chattanooga. You've seen the videos of the Rams front office coaching staff laughing at the pick because they were so surprised at him. They took him at 29. They did trade back and get him, but the con is he would have been there later. They could have continued to trade back and pick up additional 7th round picks at minimum. Anything. No one was going to take him that early. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not. We'll see. The highlights is that he's an aggressive blocker, good power, high IQ player. He can do both zone and gap run scheme, and he does it with speed. That's the highlights of him. The lowlights or the cons with this guy is that he struggled when he was in isolated pass block situations against bigger, stronger guys. If you're drafting someone in the first round that high above everyone else, you got to make sure he's a sure hit. And he may be, but there's a lot of talk about him being a possible overdraft candidate for sure. In my opinion, they could have took Trevor Penning. 2 picks earlier. Whatever. Maybe Belichick knows what he's doing. We'll see. But Trevor Penning was big, strong, and mean. Exactly what they needed on this offensive line. And per PFF, the Patriots had 3 of the 15 largest reaches in the draft. And like I said, they could have traded back regardless. So kind of surprised with that first round pick. Second round, another reach per a lot of people. They took Tyquan Thornton out of Baylor with the 50th pick. He's a straight speedster. He had the 4.28 speed at 6'3", big body. He's a solid blocker as well. We can sit here and talk good about him, but we can also talk about how they overdrafted him as well. They probably could have traded back again or got someone else. He was initially a 4th to a 7th rounder, but he rose right there before the draft. So we'll talk more about him as we go through the process, but we're just hitting the highlights of the draft right now. Their 3rd round pick, they took. Sorry, move this over so let me make this a little smaller. They took Marcus Jones with the 85th overall pick. And their picks are so not even at the starters. They took him, the cornerback out of Houston, solid speed and a tackler. He was the Paul Hornung winner, which is, he's the most versatile player. So, they got someone that they can do a lot with, which is what Belichick likes to do with these defensive players, you look at the history of the defense. They have always had someone they can move around, get them in all types of positions. The issue is he lacks size and strength. If you watch him, you see that he always gave up a step or two whenever he would press someone and then just rely on his speed to try to make up the lost ground, which I mean is not necessarily going to be the first thing that's going to happen or the most helpful thing whenever you get to the NFL. So we'll see how that translates once he gets there. But they followed one more thing. I likely see him as a slot corner, but I mean we'll see what happens. But then they followed that up by drafting Jack Jones, the cornerback out of Arizona State. He was an off-field nightmare. I mean, he could have probably been a late first round, early second round, but I mean, it's just his off-field stuff. But supposedly the Patriots love him. You hear the reports coming out of minicamp of how great he's doing. I mean, he could be the best man cornerback in the draft, but we'll see if he can stay on the field and stay out of trouble for sure. Then the surprise pick, I guess one of the many surprise picks, is that they took the quarterback out of Western Kentucky. I mean, he was great, put out amazing numbers in a smaller school, but why did you draft a quarterback in the fourth round when you have your second year quarterback, Mac Jones? Weird situation right there, but I mean, maybe again, they know more than what we do. We'll see. Seventh round, they took a tackle, Stuber. I mean, I feel like it could have been addressed much earlier in the draft, but we'll talk about that as well as we go through. One of the most questioning things again with the draft is the fact that they didn't draft any linebackers. One of their positions of weakness, potential weakness, and something that they need to grow on this defense after losing who they lost this year. But they did not They did not draft any linebackers. So another question mark on this draft class. So you look at free agency. They re-sign Matthew Slater. You know, the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl special teamers. They got James White back in the building. He was out, you know, with the injury last year. Um, Mac Wilson they traded for. Solid trade, but they let go of Winovich, so they lose him on the defense. So they're trying to get more potential out of that linebacker position. They re-signed Trent Brown, bring him back for 2 more years. They signed Malcolm Butler, who's going to start. He didn't play last year. Is he the CB1? I mean, this defense secondary, he could be CB1, but he was solid when he did last play. Then they brought in Terrence Mitchell. They got him here. Uh, I don't know if they brought him in to replace J.C. Jackson. I mean, I kind of hope not, but I don't know who's going to replace him. He gave up a 62.9% pass completion rate last year, a 104 passer rating, and he had the worst tackling grade of his career. So I don't know what they expect out of the secondary, but it's not looking good as of right now. They did also bring in Jabril Peppers. Going back to the offense, they traded for Devontae Parker. We're going to talk a lot more about Devontae Parker, but that's the additions. We look at their losses. They released Kyle Van Noy, so a huge loss on the defense. Dante Hightower is gone. Jamie Collins is gone. Shaq Mason they traded. They needed the offensive lineman. They traded him for pennies on the dollar, giving him up for a fifth-round pick to the Bucks. Excuse me. Ted Karras is out. I mean, he was versatile and very indispensable, so I don't know why they let him go, especially when you look at this offensive line. J.C. Jackson, we talked about him. They let him walk in free agency to the Chargers. And then they lost Gunner to Pittsburgh. So a lot of losses on this team that they could have kept these players that they were much needed for sure, especially cornerback position. So surprising. So now we'll get into the bulk of our discussion where we talk about their strengths and weaknesses on the team. Strength of this team is that they do have a solid second-year quarterback, what more than what a lot of other teams could say. He had 3,800 yards. They're pairing him with Devontae Parker. The highlights and the pros of Devontae Parker is that since 2019, he has the second highest passer rating on throws 20-plus yards down the field. So that can stretch this offense. What they didn't really have last year, they're going to help, especially since they saw a lot of man coverage, what Mac Jones tended to struggle with. They're going to see that a lot. Maybe Devontae can come in and help alleviate that pressure on the man defense that they see in the passing game. O-line, even though I talked about them needing to address it more, is still a relative strength of this team. They have so many high floor players. And, I mean, the transition from Shaq Mason to Cole Strange could be a struggle, but he could come in and, I mean, just build around what the rest of what they have here. Isaiah Wynn, they got Mike Owenu, David Andrews, solid center. I mean, they have players for sure to be. And Trent Brown, I mean, he's great. We know he's one of the top tackles in the league. So the offensive line still a relative strength. Another strength of this team is the running back room. I mean, they got names that have been great for years now. It's definitely the top component of their offense. They have a solid RB1 in Damian Harris. I mean, he should be the bell cow. Hopefully, they run more of a bell cow situation than a running back by committee. Last year, he had 4.6 yards per carry, 15 yards and 15 touchdowns and almost 1,000 yards. Then you add him in with Ramondre Stevenson, their draft pick last year. Then they drafted another running back in the 4th round this year. Again, questionable draft class for sure. James White is back. He was injured last year, but he's back again. And they also added Ty Montgomery, who's he got him listed as a slot receiver here. So few strengths on this team, but then they also have weaknesses that could hold them back this year for sure. It's going to be the main things that do hold them back. First off, you look at the secondary. This secondary, they do add McCourty, but they lost J.C. Jackson, one of the top cornerbacks in the league, and their turnover machine. It's going to be hard for them to replicate this, especially I hope you're not depending on 2 rookies to come in and make up for lost ground. PFF has them ranked as a 26th ranked secondary in the league, so I mean, it's not just me that sees them struggling. It could be a rate limiting factor for this team for sure, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Then you look at the pass catchers. Got Jacoby Myers, he started looking a little better last year, finally got his touchdown. Kendrick Bourne, he was the best receiver that they had last year. Came in, did better than what they expected, but then all this other money that they spent didn't really pan out. I mean, they have Hunter Henry, he was solid. Jonnu Smith was horrible. Jonnu Smith had 28, 294, and just 1 touchdown. Talking about Kendrick Bourne, he had a career high 55 catches, so great for him. They bring in Devontae Parker. Maybe he can be the number one. Outside of him, no one's a number one. They got Tyquan Thornton, but again, you don't want to depend on rookies to produce for you. You hope that they do, but you don't want to be dependent on it. I mean, their draft picks have just been bad as well. You look at N'Keal Harry. They also brought in Aguilar, spending money on him. Did not produce. So, I mean, Hunter Henry had just 1 drop last year, so hopefully he can just continue to be great and make up for all the other losses that they have in this pass catcher room. Another weakness is that we discussed is their draft class this year. They needed speed in the draft, but they overdrafted for it. They got Tyquan Thornton, overdrafted for him. They got a fast offensive lineman, overdrafted for him. I mean, their draft class just did not make sense through and through. It wasn't 1 or 2 picks. It was almost every pick that did not make sense in the grand scheme of things of what they needed for this team. And then, I mean, you hate to say it, but I mean, like the coaching is a weakness because there's no clear-cut offensive coordinator for Mac Jones. Mac Jones is going to his 2nd year. He had Josh McDaniels, who they lost to the Raiders. I mean, you want continuity, especially for your young quarterback. And, I mean, maybe they have continuity in-house, but they're not showing it. And, I mean, do you really want Joe Judge? Do you really want Matt Patricia being your play caller? Or do you want Bill Belichick spending extra time being the play caller whenever he should be just the head coach of the team? I don't know. It's not looking good as far as the coaching standpoint on this team, but I'm hoping to be proved wrong along with most of the NFL media, I guess you could say. But a lot of people have question marks on that coaching staff for sure. So we discussed outlook on both sides of the ball pretty in detail already. I mean, worried about the coaching staff, worried about the receivers. Can they bounce back? Can Mac just overcome the lack of continuity with the coaching staff and having a play caller who is a well-known, solid coach? The defense, front 4 is solid for sure. Linebacker is still a position. Didn't draft anyone. Is still a position of potential weakness. In the secondary is also a potential weakness. I mean, the front 4 is going to have to carry this defense, I would say. They're going to need to get constant pressure and alleviate the pressure is going to come on the back the back 7 of this defense. So now we'll get right into we'll talk about the projected wins and look at their schedule and discuss what we expect to happen week to week. Quick rundown. Last year, Vegas had them at I'm sorry, this year they have them at 8.5 wins. They overachieved last season. So we'll run through their schedule real quickly discussing each week's matchup. Week 1, they play the Dolphins. I think it's going to come out slow and struggle, especially with a new offensive coordinator this year, and the Dolphins are coming out trying to prove something. Patriots lose week 1. Thankfully, week 2, they play the Steelers, who Bill Belichick, they're going to scheme them to death with either Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky at the quarterback position for the Steelers, get the win there. Unfortunately, they follow that up with my sneaky MVP candidate, MVP dark horse Lamar Jackson. I feel like people have kind of written him off and written off this team, forgetting about what they did in 2019. Unfortunately, they then play the Packers, who have Aaron Rodgers and probably a top 3 defense that goes overlooked, not beating them. Week 5, they get the Lions at home. I think they get the win here. The hype train's going crazy in Detroit, but let's slow it down. The Patriots still are a team that finished 10-7 regardless of the question marks that they had last year, and the Lions are still going to have their growing pains, especially with Jared Goff. Week 6, they play the Browns. Oops, sorry, excuse me. I'm giving them a win here. That team's going to be in complete chaos all season. Deshaun Watson's going to be a storyline. I mean, Philip Dorsett, yeah, he's okay, but he's not going to carry this team to a ton of wins for sure. Monday Night Football. All right, we're going to get into the fact that the Patriots have 5 primetime games, 4 in a row through weeks 12 through 15, which is crazy. But primetime football against the Bears, Justin Fields, he might put up 10 points a game with that offense that he has. We talk about the Patriots offense, but at least Mac is probably in a little bit better situation than what Justin Fields is. So 3 wins in a row. They follow that up with the Jets. And I mean, they can just roll off the wins right now. I feel at minimum they're going to split the season series with the Jets. They're looking for Zach Wilson to take that next step. He was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year. Didn't throw for 300 or 300. I think he didn't throw for 300 yards the entire season. Not what you're looking for in your number 2 overall pick. And I feel like the Patriots again scheme them to death and can get this win for sure. Unfortunately, follow that up with the Colts. Colts are a better team with Matt Ryan. They have offensive issues as well, but they do have the best running back in the league. So, or arguably the best running back in the league. So they're going into the bye and they're 5-4. Not bad, not the best. Here, I think they're going to possibly split the season series with the Jets. They could sweep them. Zach Wilson could stay as horrible as he was, but we're still having the issues with the secondary on this Patriots team that could give up big plays, and the playmakers are going to have to come out and prove me wrong. They then play a Thanksgiving game against the Vikings. I think the Vikings are improved, and they're looking to make the playoffs under their new head coach, but I still think that the Patriots can get the win here. I mean, they're going to surprise teams. Bills, we're not going to talk about the Bills. They're Super Bowl favorites. Patriots still have a big gap in between them and the Bills, so we can go and give them a loss there and a loss here. I'm not going to go into detail with that. Luckily, they have Thanksgiving, Thursday night football, Monday night football against the Cardinals. Cardinals, we know they're horrible second half of the season. This thing may be imploded at this point under Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray. Nook will be back, but I don't expect great things from him in the second half of the season. I feel like they've overachieved, and he's going to eventually show his true self. They then play the Raiders in Week 15. I haven't done any AFC West videos, but I've discussed AFC West in every other video because that division is going to be a dogfight every week, and they have to get wins outside of their division every week in order to stay afloat in the AFC playoff picture. So unfortunately, Patriots going to take an L right there because that team would probably be a division winner in almost any other division outside the AFC West. Do play the Bengals in Week 16. We know what the Bengals are. They've added so many key pieces to all the weaknesses that they had this offseason. So I feel like this team's going to come out and shine this year. And then they play the Dolphins in Week 17. I feel like they can split. Tua, he's in his make it or break it year. If he can't succeed now, we know what he's done multiple times in pressure situations. They had the game to win year before last, whenever the Bills sat all their players and they still got blown out. So I do think the Patriots can get the win here, finishing the season 8-9. Not what Patriot fans probably want to hear, but I feel like this team is going to struggle at times. I mean, they don't have playmakers. They lost a lot of key players, especially on the defense. They gotta have a lot to make up, and then you have the coaching staff issues. So I have them going 8-9. Not the best situation in New England, but hopefully I can be proven wrong. So with each video, I look at the top players in each position. Who can be a top 5 player at that position? Who could be a top 10 player? Top 5. If somehow miraculously Devin McCourty does not age, he could go back to what he was and be a top 5 player at his position, safety position. Trent Brown potentially. I mean he's been great before. Wouldn't surprise me if he was a top 5 player again at the tackle position. Top 10, the ones I've just mentioned for sure. Hunter Henry, he can continue to be a top 10 player. Tight end, if he can continue to build that rapport with Mac Jones and continue to grow. Damian Harris, but I feel like it's going to require him to be a bell cow behind this offensive line. But I don't foresee them doing a bell cow. They're going to look at all these names. They're going to try to get everybody involved in the run game. Another underwhelming guy for last year that I just thought of was Matthew Judon. He did not produce based on the contract that they gave him. Barmore was great, though, and he'll be going into his second year. All right, MVP candidates. They don't have any MVP candidates on here, offensively or defensively. Most improved candidate. Sorry, let me highlight that. All right, so MVP, we discussed that. Most improved candidate. I kind of want to do most improved and drop off at the same time because my most improved and drop off player is the same player. It's Jonnu Smith. I mean, either way, it wouldn't really surprise me if he bounces back to what he was in Tennessee, but was that just a scheme thing under Mike Vrabel because he gets so much out of his tight ends? Is Jonnu going to take that next step? I mean, he fell off majorly last year, but could he bounce back, build a rapport with Mac Jones? Or is he just going to continue to be that drop-off candidate? I mean, he's easily my choice for drop-off candidate based on what he did last year. Is he just going to fade into oblivion while they pay him all this money? I mean, he struggled. I mean, I don't know what the problem really was last year, but it was not great. So now we'll look at their potential best and worst outcomes. Best outcomes is all this offensive worries with the offensive coordinator position is overblown. The team comes out, looks even better than they did last year on offense. Devontae Parker bounces back to where he was. Kendrick Bourne continues to be great. Jacoby Myers can be a solid number 3, number 2. Hunter Henry is amazing in the tight end role. The running back room, Damian Harris is putting up 1,500 yards. The O-line is great. That's the offensive best outcome. Defense is that the front four is a top 10 front four in the league, and the back 7 is average at best. You do that, this team can be 10-7, getting into the wild card. Let's not get crazy. Say they're going to win the division. I don't think that'll happen, especially with the Dolphins and the Jets being improved. They're going to still take their losses along the way. Worst outcome is that everything that we're worried about with the pass catchers, with the offensive coordinator, with the back 7 of this defense comes to a head and just makes the team horrible. I mean, if you told me at the end of the season they were 5-12, 6-11, 7-10, I wouldn't be surprised, especially with the glaring issues that I see on this roster and this coaching staff. But we'll see what happens. So most intriguing thing / the X factor on this team to me is Devontae Parker. He's the X factor. Is he going to come in and bounce back to what he was? Was he just in a bad situation with Tua down in Miami? He's never had someone to get him the ball. Mac has never had someone that can go get a ball like he had he never had someone last year like he has in Devontae Parker. Tyquan Thornton can also do that, but let's not talk about the rookie. Devontae Parker is that person that can go get the ball. Mac always set the ball up for his receivers to get yards after the catch, but he didn't have the players to do that. He gets this in Devontae Parker if they can get the Devontae Parker of old, but still to be determined. But if he can come in and be that number 1 receiver that could flip the season for this team, giving Mac and this offense an extra weapon. So that's the end of the video. We discussed the New England Patriots. We're going to continue going. I hope you enjoyed what we had going on here today. Please let me know. Hit that like button, comment. Please hit subscribe if you do feel necessary. Let me know what you like, what you didn't like in the comments. And pray for a better season for the Patriots fans. But until the next one, peace.